So I'm here to share with you some of the things that I've learned over the last 8 years of using the Silva method so that you can be much more successful in everything that you're doing. Well, I have learned things over the past 8 years that have really helped me to increase my success with the Mirror of the Mind technique. And I'd say I've gone from, as a beginner, maybe a 30% success rate to maybe a 95% success rate. So why should you have to go through 8 years of practice to get to that level? Why don't I share with you some of the mistakes I've made so that you can improve your success with Mirror of the Mind? Now, one of the reasons I think we all got so excited when we came to the Silva class is that on that last day of the class, when we worked cases, when we were given a name of another human being, and we were able to close our eyes and get into a special level of mind where we were able to see that person, even though we'd never met them before, and we were able to see what was wrong with them, if they had a throat problem or if they had had a leg amputated, or we could feel their feelings. If they were sad, we cried. We could feel it. I think that that experience is so exciting to us because at that moment, we're human beings having a spiritual experience. And it's not a religious experience. It has no name. It's just a spiritual experience. It goes beyond what the six senses can do for us, that very limited scope that the six senses give us. And I remember my feeling that last day of the Silva class 8 years ago. At that time, I had tremendous financial problems. And at that time, I was very poor and grew all of my own food in my backyard. And I never spent money on anything except for gasoline for my car and food. And I bought the clothing for my daughter and myself at a second-hand shop. And we didn't even have very much of that. So I lived very simply. I also had to borrow money just to be able to pay for the monthly payments on my house. So I had tremendous financial problems. I also had very serious health problems. I had disease that was later diagnosed, but I did not know what it was at the time. And it made me very, very tired all the time. And I had a lot of allergies. And even then, with those human experiences, that last day of the class, that moment when I was at level and I could feel what another person was going through and I could see what was wrong with them, even though I'd never met them before, I just didn't have those human problems at that moment. I was a human being having a spiritual experience. And when you have that experience, you don't have the human problems anymore. I didn't feel poor. I didn't feel sick. I was so excited and so into that feeling. It was absolutely amazing. And you had the same experience. So I know that after we take the class, we begin to go to level, hopefully regularly. I went to level very regularly because I enjoyed getting away from the limitations of the physical world, going within to where it was just infinite, and having that regular spiritual experience. By doing that, I was able to change what was happening in my physical life. I was able to overcome the health problems, and I was able to overcome the poverty. I remember one of the first things I ever did with the Silva method was I would go to level, and in the blue frame mirror, I visualized myself with empty pockets. I pulled my pockets out, and 1 penny fell out. And then in the white framed mirror, I visualized that I was standing there and money was coming at me from all different angles. And by programming this at level and visualizing this, what it did was it stimulated my subconscious to think of creative ways to attract money. And at the time, I was a very accomplished cook of a very specific type of cooking that's used in the United States, sometimes for very special healing properties, and it's called macrobiotic cooking. And a lot of people in the United States want to know about this cooking, but it takes a long time to prepare the food. So I actually wrote a little cookbook called Macrobiotic Meals in Minutes, and it described how to cook this food without taking a long time. And then I put a little tiny advertisement in a national magazine. And my mailbox started to fill up with orders for this cookbook, so I started to sell it around the United States. So money was coming in from one angle. Again, I kept visualizing at level, money coming in from several angles. Well, other things started happening, and money started to come from here and there, and I began to attract money into my life and have an attitude that was different about money. I think that before, I kept thinking of myself as poor, and so even though there were opportunities to attract money into my life, it's like I thought of myself as poor, so I didn't see those things. Because that's what happens. Whatever we focus on mentally, we tend to create in our lives. And I think also what happened was I began to believe that I could have money, and when you believe you can have money, you tend to be more enthusiastic and active, and I tended to do more of the things I needed to do. So mirror of the mind affects us and our energy and our behavior, but as you know, it also affects the world around you. There's a subjective communication that goes out from us mentally at all times. And when we go into a deep level of mind at the alpha dimension, that energy is much stronger. Well, again, I was projecting this energy, this thought of being able to attract money. And my telephone rang one day. And the man on the other end said that his doctor said that he needed to eat macrobiotic food to cure his health problem. And he said that he needed to have someone to prepare the food for him and bring it to his home. And he said, "I'm a millionaire and I will pay anything. It doesn't matter, you name the price. I just need you to prepare the food for me." So I did, and he did pay me, and that was the end of my money problems for a good while. So many things in my life, things that seemed to be outside of me, changed by getting into this non-physical dimension of thought and changing what I was thinking. And you've had the same experience. So a human being having a spiritual experience and creating a better life for himself or herself, that's a great thing. But still, if that's the only awareness that we have, is that we're a human being and we can have a spiritual experience and create a better life, still life is up and down. Because when things are good, then we feel good. And when things are not so good, then we feel bad. So we're still at the whim of our environment to a certain extent. Now, I'd like for you to think about the fact that you see very little of reality, almost nothing of reality. For instance, you can see the person next to you, and you can see that individual, and that individual is an organization of energy that is visible to your physical senses. You could touch the person, you can hear them, and you can see them. However, there's another level of energy that's organized in that person that you can't see, and that is the organ level. That's a level of energy where the different organs have different roles in that person's body. Now, we believe that the person next to us has a heart and has a liver, but we can't actually see it unless we are a doctor and they're dead and we cut them open or whatever. So we believe in these things, but we can't see them with our physical senses. Well, what are our organs made up of? They're made up of cells. Now, I believe in cells, but I've actually never seen a cell. My physical senses don't detect cells. However, I do know that with a good microscope, you can look through the microscope and you can actually see a cell. So our physical senses can, with help, detect a cell. That's another level of organization of energy, but it's really not available to our physical senses ordinarily. Now, what is a cell made up of? A cell is made up of atoms. Now, with a very, very special microscope, an electron microscope, you can see atoms. But normally, we physically can't detect an atom. But that's one level of life energy organization. And we are made up of atoms, cells, organs, and then we are an individual. But atoms are also made up of something else. They're made up of subatomic particles. Now, nobody has ever seen a subatomic particle. We see evidence of subatomic particles in a gas chamber, a cloud chamber. We can see the path that a charged particle makes, but we've never seen the particle itself. But we believe that it exists. Well, now we know through quantum physics that subatomic particles are made up of something else. And that is packets of energy that have all sorts of names, quarks and muons. And these are something that we believe in, we know exists, but we have no physical evidence. We cannot see these things. And yet these things are also made up of something, and that is quantum, or basic energy. Now, nobody's ever seen quantum, but we can prove mathematically that it exists. So, the basic energy that's behind everything that isn't even a thing. Your body, if you could actually see it from the viewpoint of the way it really is to a physicist, it would look like intergalactic space. It would be mostly a void with a few dots of matter. And then if you broke down that matter to its smallest possible denominator, you would find that the matter isn't even matter. Matter is made up of non-matter. In other words, all this that you see here is not even a thing. It's just an event. My body is not really solid. It's mostly space. And it's really just a lot of things happening. So we see almost nothing of reality. We see one level of energy organization, and that is the individual. We can look at them. But we know that all of this exists. So you might say that the things that we can perceive with our physical senses are the objective world. And everything that we can't perceive is the subjective world. We can only think about it. We can only imagine it, and yet we know it exists. And we know that the subjective world affects the objective world, and vice versa. So they're a unity. And that's why the first thing in the Silva method we learn is mental house cleaning, how to change our thoughts to change our physical lives, because our thoughts, the subjective dimension, definitely affect our physical selves. So we see very little of reality. And what we are here is not really a body, but just an event. And in fact, this physical body that you're looking at here, I was in Hungary 1.5 years ago, and this is a completely new body. There's not a single cell in this body that's the same as the body that I had 1.5 years ago. So if you think you're your body, then you have a big problem, because you have to think, which body? Your body is continually dying and being recreated out of raw material out of the universe. All of the elements of the universe are continually being used to create this physical body. So this is not me. There's a life energy that pulls all these things together and creates me and animates me, and that's me. It's the energy behind me. And that me, even though my brain cells are completely different from the brain cells that I had 2 years ago, I still remember being in Hungary. There's actually a memory that's passed on. It's amazing to think about it. But I'd like you to think about this. I'm not a human being having a spiritual experience, and neither are you. Instead, you're actually a spiritual being attempting to have a human experience. Now, when you realize and when you can become aware that you're a spiritual being just having a human experience, then your entire worldview changes, your entire perspective changes. Because then, if I'm a spiritual being just creating a body for maybe 40, 60, 90 years to go through some human experiences, then there's never really suffering, because everything that I encounter is just something that I'm attracting into my life to learn things, because I want to have a human experience. I'm just a spiritual being that wants to have a human experience. In the United States, and I'm sure also in Hungary, There are many people who have done hypnosis therapy and regressed people into past lives. And whether this is literally that the people have had past lives on this planet, or whether it means that we're having alternate experiences on other dimensions of reality, nobody really knows. But it's pretty obvious now that this is not the only experience we ever have, that we are a much broader entity than what inhabits this body. So when you think about yourself as a spiritual person, a spiritual being, just having a human experience, then you begin to be willing to accept everything that happens and be interested in dealing with it and be enthusiastic about it, and you can be assured that something good will come of it, and you can feel equal to the task, and you can feel attuned to whatever's going on, and you can feel at one with yourself and with all the people around you. On the other hand, if you feel like you're a human being, just having a human experience and sometimes a spiritual experience, then when things happen to you, you can resent it. Like, I'm poor, so I resent it. Why is the world this way? And you are then looking outside yourself for happiness. You're depending on things outside yourself to make you happy. And, oh, why is this happening to my body? I have cancer, or I have this disease. Why me? You get resentful and angry, or depressed, or just feel like a victim of life. And this brings on all the emotional states of fear and grief and feeling indifferent and feeling separate from yourself and from other people, and just causing a lot of basically human experiences. But when you visualize yourself and know that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, then everything is a lesson for you. Every person that ever comes into your life, instead of saying, why did this happen to me, you actually ask, what's the lesson to be learned from this person? I mean, this is part of my human experience. So everything becomes different. When you can have that kind of an attitude, everything becomes basically joyful, no matter what it is. And then you can enjoy experiencing this human experience by doing the very best you can, using the tools that you've learned through the Silva method to make the most fun human experience you have. If you're a spiritual being just having a human experience, you always have choice. Do you want to have a human experience that's miserable and negative? Or do you want to have one that's fun and entertaining? Or do you want to have a human experience that's meaningless and empty? Or do you want to feel the meaning in things? Now, you may think, well, this depends on what happens to me. But these things do not depend on circumstances. Circumstances are human experience. In a recent television interview with a prisoner of war, an American who was held as a prisoner of war, and he was beaten and treated terribly, the interviewer asked, how were you able to hold yourself together, and why are you not ruined by this experience? And he said, they could never take away that essential self that I am. He was able to maintain the feeling that he was a spiritual being. He was not the body that was getting flogged. He was not the mind that was getting insulted and tormented. And because he was able to hold on to who he really was, he was able to experience all those things from a distance and as a learning experience. And it did not touch who he really was. Now, why does Mirror of the Mind actually work? We learn Mirror of the Mind in the Silva method to be able to change our subjective experience so that we can be happier, and so that we can also change what's outside and around us. But the reason Mirror of the Mind actually works has to do with three different things. First of all, desire. When you imagine something over and over and over and over, it builds desire in you. For instance, if you sit and close your eyes and think about the most delicious ice cream in the world, the most beautiful ice cream, all natural and maybe with wonderful syrup poured over the top of it, and maybe just perfectly roasted nuts, and you imagine what it looks like, and you imagine what it tastes like, and you imagine the feeling of it coming down your throat, the more you imagine it, the more you'll have a desire for it. And when you build up enough desire, desire is the energy that makes you act. It's the energy that makes you go out and do something. And if you think about ice cream enough, after a while, you will have to go get the ice cream. So desire is the energy that makes you want to do something, makes you put yourself in the place where you can get what you want. As an example, let's say that there's a man who wants to have a relationship, he wants to get married. And maybe he's had some very bad experiences with women. So he keeps visualizing those bad experiences that he's had. Now, he's not aware that he's doing this. Most of us aren't aware of our thoughts. But because he keeps visualizing bad experiences, it doesn't build up his desire to have a relationship. He doesn't want to suffer like that again. So he kind of avoids being where he can meet people. Maybe he just works a lot. And he doesn't go places where he can meet women. And he doesn't read books about how to make a happy relationship. And he doesn't learn things that would help him be happier in a relationship. Because this image in his mind is that it won't be very happy. Now, what if he comes to the Silva course and he learns Mirror of the Mind, and he learns to choose what he's thinking, and he learns to be more aware of his thoughts? So he goes into a relaxed level of mind, and he visualizes being in a happy relationship. Maybe he thinks of someone that he knows who has a really happy relationship, and he visualizes that at level, and he sees how the people interact, and they laugh together, and they're having fun together, and they touch and kiss and snuggle, and it's very good interaction, and they talk together, and it's very fulfilling and stimulating. And then he imagines that he can have a relationship like that. So he imagines himself with a woman, and they have lots of things to share, and they're happy, and they're talking, and when they have problems, they work them out, and they feel very close to each other. They enjoy doing things together. As he visualizes all these things and thinks about it and thinks about it, and it looks so good, he gets this incredible desire. Yes, I want a relationship like this. That would be wonderful. And so the desire makes him do the kinds of things he needs to do to have a relationship. He stops working quite so much and starts doing things where he can get out and meet people. He invites friends over to his house. He tells his friends he wants a relationship and, to look for somebody for him, because he becomes positive about it by visualizing what he wants. So desire is a key factor. Now, also, when you visualize something a lot for yourself, you start to become familiar with it. It's like if at level he visualizes himself every day in a happy relationship, he starts to identify with that. And what does that mean? He begins to believe that it is possible. Now, we are always putting out both objective energy, in other words, things that are physically definable and perceivable, and also subjective energy. So if he has a belief that he can have a happy relationship, and he's around people, he's giving out a subjective energy that, hey, I can have a happy relationship. It would be wonderful to be with me. And people are going to respond to him very differently. If, on the other hand, he still had a belief that he couldn't have a relationship, even if he were around a beautiful woman, he would be giving out the subjective energy, the thought energy, that I'm not a person that can have a happy relationship. And so that woman would not be attracted to him unless she was also a person who believed that she did not deserve a happy relationship. And then two people who believe they don't deserve a happy relationship get together and they create an unhappy relationship. So by changing his belief and being able to build up the belief that he can have what he wants, he begins to just kind of exude an energy that, hey, I can have this. And then he begins to attract that into his life. The third thing that Mirror of the Mind does is it builds your expectancy, your expectation for your desired end result. If he thinks about it all the time, then he starts to expect that it's going to happen. And expectation is a wonderful energy. It's like the openness to let it occur in your life. Just recently, I've talked with many people who have actually used Mirror of the Mind to program to attract a really wonderful relationship. And some of these people have been married for 4 or 5 years now, and they're still just crazy about each other, so happy together. And in every case, those individuals made a long list of everything that they really wanted in a relationship. Some of these people took 2 or 3 months. There was a woman named Jeanette Long, and she took a couple of months just going to level, thinking about what kind of things made her happy in a relationship, what kind of person she's compatible with, what she wanted. And she ended up taking a little notebook, and every time she thought of something, she would write it down. She did glass of water technique to stimulate her subconscious to think of things. She wrote down all the things that were important to her in a relationship. And then she went to level one day, and she spent 45 minutes at level visualizing this really wonderful relationship where they would enjoy each other and honor each other and enhance each other's lives. And after that, she would spend just a few minutes each day programming, visualizing that happy relationship. Also, whenever she took a walk, she would just say to herself, my ideal mate is getting ready for me, and I'm getting ready for him. Now, we know that there's no perfect person in the world. I mean, to expect a perfect person to come along is ridiculous. But for each one of us that's on the planet, there's a perfect match for us. There's someone who has complementary needs. In other words, for me, I need somebody who talks and who likes to converse because I like a lot of intellectual stimulation. So a very quiet person would not be right for me. But there's nothing wrong with someone being quiet. They just need to be with someone who will appreciate that and enjoy it. And I need to be with someone who likes to talk and exchange ideas. So we all have a good fit. And as an example of that, even though we have problems, we're still right for someone else or they're right for us. There was a woman here in the United States who had a very bad problem of very bad breath. She had tried some different kinds of mouthwash. She had tried using different kind of devices to brush her teeth. She had tried eating different foods. She'd tried sprays. She'd gone to the dentist. They could not find out why she had such bad breath. But she was a very beautiful woman and very good personality and a joy to be around. So a lot of men were attracted to her. But when they would get close to her, they would not be attracted because her breath really smelled bad. So she decided that when she met a man that was really right for her, she would not let him smell her breath. So she finally met a guy that was wonderful, just perfect for her. And so every time she got really close to him, she would just close her lips. And when they kissed, she would kiss with her lips closed. Now, he really loved her a lot, and he thought so much of her, but he was disturbed by the way she kissed. But he kept thinking, well, she's so perfect for me in every way, and I love her so dearly. As time goes by, I'll talk to her about the kissing. Well, she was a very romantic person, and she liked to take off her shoes and walk in the water at the beach and walk in the woods. And one thing she noticed about him was that he would never take his shoes off. It turns out he had very bad foot odor. Now, he did not want her to know, because he was so in love with her, he said, I am not going to ruin this relationship by letting her find out that I have such bad foot odor. And he had tried everything. He had tried eating different foods. He had tried these things that we have here in the United States that you put in your shoes. They're called odor eaters. And he had tried those, and that didn't help. So he was determined to keep his shoes on. And finally, their relationship got closer and closer, and about 3 months into the relationship, they were very, very close. And it came to one evening when they knew that they were going to be intimate with each other and they were going to make love. And she went into the bathroom and she was just crying and crying because she knew she was going to have to get close to him and open her mouth, and she knew that he would not like her anymore, and she was so worried that he would stop loving her. So she was in the bathroom crying and crying, and he got undressed and got in the bed and put his feet under the covers. And she came out of the bathroom and she jumped into his arms and she said, I have a confession I have to make. I have to tell you something. And he said, let me guess. You ate my socks. There's a perfect person for every one of us. Those two people could fall in love and they could understand each other's difficulties and live with them. So my friend Jeanette was not looking for a perfect person, but she was looking for the perfect person for her, a perfect match. And it took about 2 months of programming, just a few minutes each day. And she met a man named Victor. And they have been together ever since. It's been about 3 years of total happiness for them. And he is literally everything on her list that she wrote. I've heard so many stories like this, some graduates of mine who have had the same experiences. And it's just been very moving to me. Now, they built up their desire for that. They built up the belief that they could have it. And with that image in mind of what they wanted, they also were able to recognize it when it came along. One of the things Jeanette told me was that a lot of men started asking her out, but immediately she could tell if somebody was not right for her, because she had in mind what was right. Now, one man who did this, named Russ Noble, told me that he also made a list, but he added this or something even better. And I think that's a very wise thing to do, because then you open yourself up to whatever is absolutely best for you. So Mirror of the Mind works both subjectively and objectively to allow us to attract things into our lives, to allow us to do the behaviors that will get what we want. And one thing I want to say about meditation that will really help you to be successful. You should treat your meditation like diarrhea. You know, people sometimes say, oh, I don't have time to meditate, I was late to work, or I'm so busy, I can't meditate. If you were very busy, but suddenly you got diarrhea, would you take the time to go to the bathroom? Of course you would. So that's the kind of priority you should put on meditation, because your thoughts at your meditative level are going to change your whole life. I find that the most important time for me to meditate is in the morning. When I first get up, it's like that first 30 minutes of my day sort of sets the tone for the whole day. So immediately I like to get up and go into my level and visualize how I'd like to be with people that day, and how I'd like to interact, and how I'd like to feel, and to see the best in everything, and to be able to achieve what I want to achieve. And what it does is it kind of connects me up with my higher intelligence for the day. It gets me on track, and my entire day goes more smoothly. So I find that very first thing in the morning is most important. And I also find that right after lunch for me is a good time to go to level again, because I relax, I get my energy back, I program my long-term goals, and I get all focused again for my afternoon, so that I take much less time doing my work in the afternoon. I'm much more alert and energized, and make fewer mistakes and have a wonderful afternoon. Then in the evening, sometimes I will go to level also just to really reflect on my day, to correct any bad memories, and to release the stresses of the day. But it is so important just to do it regularly. It's like exercise. If you just pick up some weights and lift them maybe twice every year, you're not going to build muscles. If you pick them up and lift them a little bit each day, maybe you don't see the muscles right away, but after a while you start to notice that you're getting a change. And it's the same thing with going to level. You use it a little bit each day and you find your whole life beginning to change. You already know that. Now, have all my Mirror of the Mind projects worked? Absolutely not. But I have gotten so much more successful. So let me go over how you do Mirror of the Mind. First of all, you go into your level, and then you visualize the blue-framed Mirror of the Mind in front of you, and this will be to reflect back to you an image of the problem as it is. One of the beautiful things I think about the Silva method is that instead of encouraging people to deny that they have problems, the Silva techniques encourage people to face a problem and then focus on the goal, so that we first always admit that we have a problem or a challenge. So at level, visualize the present problem, whatever it is. For instance, a woman in one of my classes had a hiatal hernia. It's a very uncomfortable problem where the diaphragm allows part of the esophagus to come up to, it sort of is like a bubble above the diaphragm. It's caught there. And it can be very uncomfortable, and her doctor had told her she couldn't eat certain kinds of foods that would irritate it, and she would have to sleep sort of sitting up in the bed so that she wouldn't be completely horizontal and straining this area. And so she used Mirror of the Mind for that. So in the blue frame mirror, she visualized herself with this awful sensation here, this bad feeling, and she couldn't eat any of the foods that she wanted to eat. So one of the nice things about the blue framed mirror is that it helps you to step away from your problem and look at it from a distance, so you don't feel so overwhelmed. You literally look at it from a distance. You see yourself having the problem. Now, if you don't see images at level, that's okay. It doesn't have to be like a photograph. I still, after 8 years, I am not extremely visual. I tend to just feel it or just know it. I just think about it. I don't have to see it like a picture. But in whatever way you like to think about it or visualize it, just imagine a blue frame mirror and there's the problem reflected back to you. Then you erase that image, because what you want to do is to totally destroy or neurologically discombobulate that image. You want to stop your brain from continuing to energize that image. So you want to do something that tells your brain, this is not what I'm going to visualize anymore. Because by thinking about this and believing in it and visualizing it, I've been creating it. So you completely destroy that. And then you bring in a white framed mirror from the left. And though the white framed mirror denotes the desired end result or the solution. Now you don't have to know how this is going to come about. This is just directing energy towards the solution. So you visualize the white framed mirror and you visualize yourself in the condition that you want. So she visualized herself with everything healthy, and she was eating the foods that she wanted to, and she went to her doctor and said, I don't have any problems. And he said, gosh, that's amazing. So she visualized all the things that she wanted, or she thought about them. She believed in them. Now, as you know, sometimes when you do Mirror of the Mind, you know that everything in nature has a vibration to attract certain things. For instance, flowers have a certain color vibration that attracts a certain kind of insect. And if the color vibration were changed, then different insects would be attracted. So think about it. Thought is a vibration. We can measure thoughts with the EEG equipment. So if you change the vibration or the nature of your thought, you change what is attracted to you. So sometimes with Mirror of the Mind, something is attracted into your life that gives you a solution. Sometimes also, your body responds to it. By visualizing your body healthy, your brain gets the picture. It's like a blueprint. My dog is outside barking. I'm going to go let him in. So in some cases, the body actually goes through a change. And this woman was named Jamie. And she visualized this 3 times at level, being completely healthy and free of the hiatal hernia. And that night, she went to bed, and in the middle of the night, she woke up with fresh air rushing up out of her esophagus like she was burping. And something was happening inside structurally. Her body had actually gone through a change. And when she got up in the morning, she did not have a hiatal hernia anymore. Her body had gotten the message from her brain and had actually caused the change. Another example of this, 4.5 years ago, I had a tumor in my left breast, about the size of a kidney bean. And I had mammograms and sonograms, and it was a solid mass. And so they said it has to be removed. They did not want to do a biopsy. And they were afraid it might be cancer, although that was not very likely. So the doctor that I went to, the surgeon, was a Silva graduate. And he said, look, surgery is dangerous. You have to be anesthetized. You have to be cut on. You know how to do something that's not dangerous. I'd like for you to go into your level and to visualize that being healed, visualize the white blood cells coming in and taking away the abnormal cells and the tissue all becoming normal again. And he said, I'd like you to do it for 2 months, and I will watch your progress. And if for any reason you can't do it by yourself, then I'll be glad to do surgery. So I went home, and at that time, I had never healed something in my own body. Now I've healed lots of things. It's no big deal. But at that time, I had never done it. Now I had people come to my class who had had cancer and who had healed themselves, or arthritis that was totally deforming, and they had healed themselves. I had graduates that came, after they came through my class, they would go and have all sorts of dental work done with no Novocaine and no painkillers. But I had used the meditation for other things, but never for health. And so I think I was a little afraid it wouldn't work for me. And I didn't do anything about it for 2 months. And I went back and he said, the tumor is still there. We have to do surgery in 2 weeks. Well, suddenly the image of surgery became very close. And I decided I needed to do something about it. So I started going into my level 10 minutes every day and getting a feeling for what the tissue on the healthy side might be like. And I would just imagine that healthy tissue, and then I would superimpose that image on the unhealthy side, as if to tell my brain, to tell my body, not like that. Make it like this. So I put a blueprint of health there. I also imagined the white blood cells of my immune system going and taking away any abnormal cells and taking them out of the system. I did that for about 10 minutes every day for 2 weeks. And I went back, and actually the first doctor that had discovered the tumor was the one that checked me. And he was very concerned that I had not had surgery. And I was on the table, and he was checking for the tumor, and he was going like this. And he was saying, oh, you should have had surgery. This is very serious. And then he went over to the other side and he was going, I just don't understand why you would take these risks. And then he went back over to this side and then he said, which side was it on anyway? And I said, on the left side, on my left breast. And he said, well, it's gone. And he said, have you been doing that Silva stuff? And I said, yes, I have. And he said, well, keep me on the mailing list. Well, he hasn't taken the course yet, but his partner took the course about 6 months later and is a very big enthusiast of the Silva method. So I've had mammograms since then, and that tumor has been gone. And now I'm really glad I had that experience because it taught me that I can do it. Since then, I've had many experiences where I've saved thousands of dollars on medical bills and probably been a lot safer because I've been able to deal with things from the inside instead of outside. We know now there's an entire field of scientific study called psychoneuroimmunology that's about how the thoughts affect the immune system and all the automatic systems of the body. And it's this ability for thought to change the autonomic nervous system that causes headache control to work in the Silva method. Headache control is one of the most successful techniques in the course. I have had so many people report to me. Just in my last class, there was a woman who had constant headaches 4 or 5 times a week. She was on several different drugs, and she went to a headache center where the neurologist recommended the Silva method. She came to the class. After the first day of the course, where she learned headache control, she was free of headaches. Another man in my class before that who was on 10 different medications for headaches. Since he's taken the course, he's only had 2 headaches that he was not able to stop with mind control. And so we have incredible chemistry system. We have a whole chemical factory inside our own body if we can just direct it. And Mirror of the Mind is just to direct energy. While we're having our human experience, we may as well direct our energy the way that we want it to be directed. So, Mirror of the Mind, of course, can be used for health. Now, it's nice to make it fun. I have a friend, Suzanne Alexander, who went blind a number of years ago. She had diabetes, and she had diabetic retinopathy, and she went completely blind in both eyes. For about 5 months, she was blind. She never could really accept it. You know, people told her, you have to get a seeing eye dog, just accept it, don't be so angry with it. But she never could accept it. And she finally remembered that she had read the book, The Silva Mind Control Method, and that there was something in there about relaxing and visualizing what you want. So she began to relax several times a day, and what she felt at level that she needed to do was to love her eyes. And she made this fun. She imagined hugging her eyeballs. It seems ridiculous, but when you make it enjoyable and pleasant like that, see, that's the way our right brain hemisphere works, through silly things and through symbols and things that don't make sense to the judgmental side of ourselves, the left brain hemisphere. But she visualized hugging her eyeballs. Another thing Suzanne loves is jewels, beautiful stones. So she would imagine taking jewels and crushing them into a fine powder and putting them down into her eyeballs, and her eyeballs would just be glistening with all this jewelry dust. And she did this about 4 or 5 times a day for about 15 or 20 minutes each time. And at the end of 2.5 weeks, she had her eyesight back. And she's now a friend of mine, and she can get around fine. She has her eyesight. This is the power that our thoughts can have over our bodies. And science is studying this and recognizes it now. But we also realize that Mirror of the Mind and our thoughts at a deep level also not only affect our bodies, but can subjectively communicate to others, and then things can come into our lives. For instance, John Newman, the Silva Method director in the United Kingdom, also about 6 years ago had a hiatal hernia. And his doctor said you can't eat all the foods you like and you have to sit up in the bed at night. So he started doing Mirror of the Mind. The first time in the blue frame mirror, he visualized the problem, and then got rid of that. And in the white frame mirror, you visualize the solution. And you never go back to the blue framed image again. So every time at level, he would visualize being able to eat whatever he wanted and be happy. And what happened with him was his body did not change, but someone came into his life who told him about a substance that he could drink. It's a natural substance that was very healing for hiatal hernias. And he immediately bought some of this, and he drank it, and he was completely fine. He's been fine ever since. So sometimes we attract a physical solution into our lives. But you don't put any kind of limitations on Mirror of the Mind. Now, some of the things that I've done that have been mistakes over the years. Okay, here's one that I did. When I was very poor still, making very little money each year, I wanted to go to the International Convention of the Silva Method, and I knew I needed money to do that. And so I started visualizing at level that I would be able to sell some of my paintings. Now, I had 13 paintings that I had done, and they were very beautiful and very detailed, and when I did sell paintings, they would sell for quite a lot. But I would usually only sell 3 paintings per year. So a painting might be $1,000 or $2,000. But I thought if I can sell all 13 paintings, I can pay off all of my debts, and then I can go to this convention. So I visualized at level, selling the paintings, and I was able to be in the right place at the right time to get them shown in a hospital. And of course, doctors were always my best customers, because in the United States, doctors make quite a lot of money, and so they could afford to buy these paintings. And I would go to level and visualize having the money in my hand, and I would put white light around the paintings and visualize that they go to the right person, and not a single painting sold. Now, over the years, I've kept a list of some of my major Mirror of the Mind projects, and when they happen, I check them off. And I'm able to go back and look and see which things happened and which things didn't, and able to learn from that. Some of the things that didn't happen, I just didn't have much desire for, or I was very vague about programming, or I didn't expect them to happen at all, or I didn't have any belief that they could happen. But this one I really believed it could happen. But when I looked back, I realized that I did not want to let those paintings go, because I knew subconsciously that I would not be painting anymore, and I wanted to keep those last 13 paintings. And there was a conflict in my attitude. I really secretly wanted those paintings. And so what I really wanted came through. Actually, what I really wanted was to be able to go to Texas, and in the end I was able to go because the money came from other sources. And I was able to do what I really wanted to do, and to this day I'm glad I still have those paintings. So sometimes there's a conflict in your attitude, or you really don't have desire for something, and that can block your programming. Another thing that can make a mistake in your programming is to program for the wrong end result. Now, Paul Grievous, who used to teach the Silva Method in New York, said that a woman came to his class, and she had been going out with a man who was wonderful, and she really loved him, and he was also dating another woman. And he said that he was going to stop dating both women and then decide after a month which one he would marry. So this woman came to the Silva class, and she knew that she could use Mirror of the Mind and visualize this man choosing her, and then she would marry him. So every day she would visualize in the white frame mirror walking arm in arm with this man into their apartment building, and the doorman would say hello to them and call them both by name. And that's all she visualized every day. At the end of the month, this man came to her and he said, "I have decided to marry the other woman." She was furious. She said, "Mirror of the Mind doesn't work. This is a bunch of baloney. I don't like this stuff." She was furious. Well, after a couple of months, she got over it. And one day she was coming home on the bus, and he got onto the bus. He and his wife had moved into her apartment building, so they were going to the same building. So they sat together and they started talking and they started laughing. They started having a good time. And when they got off the bus, just as they were walking into her apartment building, she put her arm in his, and they walked in arm, and the doorman looked at them and called them both by name. And she almost fell on the floor. It was exactly what she had visualized so many times at level. She had visualized the wrong end result. If she wanted to marry him, she should have visualized being married with him and being happy. And in the case of something that deals with another person, you always want to add this or something even better, because you want it to be best for them too. And there may have been an even better man for her. But can you imagine? She got exactly what she had visualized at level. Another way to do mirror of the mind wrong, or to get a result that you don't want, is to have some programming that's the opposite of what you think you're programming. And by that I mean you may be going to level, and for a few minutes each day you're visualizing something in your life. But 24 hours a day you are visualizing the opposite. And I've had a very interesting experience with this in my own life. That is that, first of all, when you're highly emotional and something happens to you and you think a thought while you're very emotional, that's a very strong programming time. It's like all your brain neurons are so on and so alert, and then you say something to yourself. That can be a very strong program. So sometimes you may be going to level and programming something, but the opposite will occur, and that's because you programmed the opposite during a time of heightened emotion. As an example, I was in Seattle a number of years ago at a Silva class, and there was a woman there who said that several years earlier she had been in places where she had won 2 contests in a row. And she began to think of herself as a contest winner. And she thought of herself as a contest winner when she was in a heightened emotional state. She was all excited and she just won the contest, and she thought, I win contests all the time. And what happened was, even though she was not a Silva graduate, we all do mental programming no matter what, she started literally winning contests wherever she went. In fact, it was so obvious to even other people that if she went to a party and there were just a little prize, a door prize, people would say, don't even bother to register for the door prize because Claudia always wins the contest. So she had this habit of winning contests, and she attracted that in her life. And one time she went to a very fancy affair where she had on a beautiful long evening gown. It had a big slit up the side, and she had on very high heels, and she won the prize. And so at the end she walked up on this stage to get the prize. But the stage was something that they had made at the last minute, and they had nailed it together with some pieces of wood. And when she walked up the stairs, the spike of her heel stuck down in a crack in the step, and it turned, and she fell down, and her dress split wide open. She was just embarrassed, and it was very awkward, and she was humiliated. And at that moment, she thought, I never want to win a contest again in my life. It was during that emotional time that she thought that. And guess what? It's been years since then, and she's never won a contest. It was real interesting that I heard that experience while I was in Seattle, because I did not know it, but I was having a similar experience at that very time. And learning this helped me to be a better Silva instructor. When I had taught my class just before I left to come to Seattle, I had a lot of challenges in that class. And there were some people that really gave me a lot of challenge. And at that time, I would always program for 30 people in each class. In the United States, we have much smaller classes. Now I usually have about 100 people in each class, new people. But I programmed for 30 people in each class, and there would always be about 30 or 31 or 32 people in the class. There were 32 people in that class, but I had a lot of challenges with the personalities of those people. And so I remember I was just exhausted at the end of the class, and I remember saying to a graduate, while I was traumatized, feeling exhausted from this class, I said, next time I want half this many people in my class. And then I forgot all about that. Well, I went to Seattle to take a Silva class there, and every day I would program with Mirror of the Mind that my class at home, when I came back, I would have 30 new people. And so when I got home, well, first of all, while I was in Seattle, I kept having this kind of a twinge. It was just a funny feeling that it wasn't going to work. it's the same kind of feeling that you get when you're doing cases and you can feel that someone's sick or that their foot hurts or that their heart is troubling them. And so I was actually getting feedback that it wasn't happening. And so I thought, what do I really, really want? Because the number in the class is not important. What I want is a really meaningful experience with some people. So I just started programming to have a wonderful experience and to teach the people well, whoever I taught. And so when I went back to my hometown of Greensboro, I found out that the man that was supposed to mail out my newsletters had not done it. So a lot of the people who wanted to take the class could not sign up for it. And so when I went in to teach my class, guess how many people were there? 16. Exactly half the number that I had had in my other class. And I had programmed, I want half this many people in my class. Now, when you've got something like that, I think of it as an umbrella that's over you. There was an emotion-backed program that I want half the number 32 in my class next time. And it was above me. So it's like Mirror of the Mind is trying to focus energy to get a goal. It's like when you take a magnifying glass and you take all the sunshine, you get it through the magnifying glass, you can hold it just the right place over a leaf, and it can actually focus the energy so much that it burns a hole in the leaf. But if you can't get the sunshine, there's no energy to focus. So we don't make the energy that creates things happening from Mirror of the Mind. The energy is already there. We simply focus it, and we direct it with our thoughts. But if there's an umbrella there, the sunshine can't get through. So if you have an old program that's very, very strong, that's the opposite of what you're trying to program for in the present, it can stop you from having the energy to make your goal come true. So in that case, if that ever happens to you and you get that twinge like something's wrong, something's not going to happen, then you should go up and look and see, what's this program that's keeping me from getting my goal? And then change that. And in my case, what had happened was I still had a belief that I had to get out there and control everybody's experience in my class, that I had to make them have a benefit from the method. And now, of course, I realize that's not true, that I just put the information out there, it works for everybody, everybody gets it at their own pace. Some people are fast, some people are slower, but everybody benefits. And I can teach 1,000 people in one class. And everybody benefits. So what I needed to do was to go back and change that limiting belief that I had to get personally involved in everybody's experience in the class, because that's very difficult to do if you have very many people. If I had known that at the time, I could have gone into my level and put that belief in the blue frame mirror and then gotten rid of that and put in the white frame mirror, visualizing myself when the white frame mirror comes in from the left, visualizing myself really being able to effectively teach large groups of people and having them enjoy it. And then I wouldn't feel the need to have a small group. But anyway, it was a learning experience for me. I had a wonderful class, everything that I programmed for. And it taught me how important the emotion programming is that we do. Now, another thing in Mirror of the Mind, I think of Mirror of the Mind as like planting a seed in the garden and then doing the kind of things that it takes to make it grow into a beautiful plant. Now, the first thing you do when you plant a seed in a garden is you take away the weeds, because you wouldn't just stick a seed in the ground and there are weeds everywhere, because the weeds would choke out the energy that must go to the seed. So when you go out and you pull the weeds, that's mental house cleaning. It's like you start cleaning out the negative beliefs that you have that have kept you from having this goal. Then you plant the seed. And then you water it some, and then you go inside and you get away from it. Now, if you go inside and you think, I wonder if that seed is really sprouting. I wonder if it's really sprouting. Gosh, I don't think it's really sprouting. Then you go back outside and you dig it up to see if it's sprouting. And when you dig it up, you disturb the energy flow. So then you put it back in the ground and you come back inside and I don't know if it's really sprouting. So you go up and dig it up And every time you do that, you disturb the energy flow. It will never sprout like that. That is called doubt. When you doubt, it's like digging up the seed of your programming and disturbing it. So how do you keep from doubting what you're programming for or visualizing? It helps a lot to read about people who have already done what you've done. If you're programming to have a successful business, read about people who have been successful, who have overcome big obstacles, who have done the impossible. If you're working on changing something in your body and overcoming an illness, then read about people who have done it. Another way to build up your belief is to think about times in the past when you have achieved something that was remarkable. And think about that before you do your programming to build your belief. But it's very important not to dig up the seed. Don't doubt in your goal. Another thing is when you believe you're not worthy of your goal. Now sometimes you'll be programming and you'll feel kind of a funny feeling, and sometimes you have to ask yourself, do I really feel worthy of this goal? Do I feel like I deserve it? Because that could be like an umbrella hanging over you, keeping the sunshine away. So if you feel like that's true, then you need to go back and reprogram that limiting belief. So in the blue frame mirror, I feel like I don't deserve it. In the white frame mirror, I do deserve it. Of course I deserve it. Give yourself a million reasons why you deserve it. Write down reasons why you deserve it. Build up that feeling of deserving it. Then you don't have any conflict about getting it subconsciously. And then you can go directly for that goal. Another thing that can stand in the way of your goals is giving up. Helen Hadsell, who is the greatest contest winner of all time, and she's a Silva graduate and uses the Silva method, says that at the alpha brain frequency level and at the programming level, there are no failures. Sometimes there are delays, but never failures. When you do Mirror of the Mind, it's as though you're standing on one shore of a river, and you know that what you want is on the other shore. So you throw the anchor to the other shore, and there's a rope between you and that anchor. And you must keep that anchor firmly rooted on the other side and pull yourself across. Well, as you pull yourself across, there may be currents. The water may be cold. There may be rocks that hit you. But you have to keep your eye on the other shore and keep pulling yourself across. If you want to stop sometimes and rest, that's okay. But keep going towards your goal, and you will get there. If you give up halfway and you let go of that rope, you'll be swept down the river. One man came to me and he was very discouraged because he had programmed at level to be able to make a deal with the bank to refinance his house. And by doing that, he would end up having much more money. And he had programmed for it to happen, and at the last minute, it was refused. They said, there's no way we can do it. And he was so disappointed because he needed that money. And he came to me and told me that it had not worked. And I said, that's not true. It can still work. You must go to level again and visualize having your house refinanced. Don't stop. Don't give up. So he went into his level and visualized it happening. And when he got relaxed and pictured that goal, the thought occurred to him, and he had a memory of a woman who can approve these loans in her office. And he remembered her name, and he got up from level and called her, and he took her all the information, and that day she approved the refinancing of his house, and he was able to receive all that extra money. If he had not gone to level that one extra time, then he wouldn't have achieved his goal. So imagine yourself going across a river. Don't stop. There may be delays, but never stop going towards your goal. Now, if you ever find yourself programming for many things and nothing seems to be working right in your life, there's a question you can ask yourself, and that is, who am I holding a grudge against? Because you need to forgive somebody. If everything in your life is going wrong, there's somebody you need to forgive. The reason I say that is that when you hold a grudge against another human being, It's like you build a brick wall around yourself that keeps you from being able to be in the life condition to attract good. And that person may have done something terrible to you, but as you hold a grudge against them, it just creates a negative energy in you. Now, to forgive someone else does not mean that you have to condone their behavior. Their behavior may have been totally wrong, but it does mean that you just let go of the negative attachment, the thinking about it all the time, the negative feelings. And when you do, then you're free, and you're free to move on into positive experiences. There are a lot of books out in the United States on forgiveness, and there are a lot of workshops, and it's hard to believe that it could be simple. But I have found that a very simple and very profound thing to do is to, when you have someone that you're holding a grudge against, go into your level and picture that person and just say to yourself, if they knew better, they would do better. Because when you realize at a deep level of mind that every person is acting out of their own limiting beliefs and their own pain and their own background, then you don't hold such a grudge against them. You can just see them objectively and realize that they are who they are and accept that. You don't have to be around them, but you just don't get all tense about it and think about it all the time. You may choose not to be around that person. So simply going into your level and saying, if they knew better, they would do better, can help you to release that negative feeling. Then another thing that I've made as a mistake in my programming is to be visualizing something positive, but saying to myself something negative. You know, your brain works in 3 modes: visual, what you picture; auditory, what you say to yourself and what you hear; and then kinesthetic, or what you feel, the sensations. Like, imagine petting a dog and the soft fur, or imagine looking at a dog, what a dog looks like, or imagine hearing the sound of a dog bark. So your brain processes that in all 3 ways. Well, you can be visualizing something very positive, but telling yourself something very negative. And I remember one time I was getting ready to go on a trip, and it was about an hour before I had to get on the plane. So I was rushing around and getting all the things I needed, and there was one item of clothing I had to have, and I could not find it. So immediately I went into my level, and in the blue frame mirror I visualized not having it. In the white frame mirror I visualized having this item of clothing in my hand, and I was saying, oh, you know, here's my clothing, I'm so glad I found it. But as I was visualizing that, I suddenly caught myself saying to myself, I will never be able to find it. There's no way this will happen. And instantly when I heard that thought, I canceled it. And I said, I am finding this item of clothing immediately. The moment that I said that to myself mentally, I had a memory of where it was. I had this flash of a thought of a piece of furniture that I had moved into the attic, and I knew it was in that piece of furniture. So I ran upstairs, went and looked in that drawer, and there was that item of clothing. Now that memory, of course, was in me, but I had to be able to release it. And if I thought, I can't find this, that would block me from releasing that memory. So the moment that I got it, visual and auditory, the memory came through. So always be sure that you're saying positive things to yourself. If you're doing a visualization and you're thinking, why isn't this happening? Or this will never happen, then it's not as likely to happen. You're blocking the energy. So always watch that auditory level. That's where a lot of the garbage can be. So I've probably given you some food for thought and some ideas. Now I'd like you to actually take some time, and I'm going to lead you through this, to begin to get clear on what some of your important goals are. Because I'm going to describe to you how to make your own meditation tape if you'd like to, or guided visualization that another person could lead you through. So what I'd like you to do is to have a piece of paper, and I'd like you to divide it up horizontally so that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 lines, so you've got 5 sections. Now you're going to label each one of these sections differently. The top one is going to be things that you'd like to have. Now that can be physical things, like I'd like to have a healthy body, or I'd like to have a house, I'd like to own a house, or I'd like to have a certain type of business or something like that. Those are the things that you can see, that you can own. And those are some of the things that you'll want to program for. And the second category is things that you'd like to do. For instance, a couple of friends of mine didn't have any money, but they wanted to travel around the world. And they wrote down on their sheet of paper, one of the things they'd like to do is to travel around the world. And they would visualize this at level every day, traveling around the world, even though they didn't know where the money would come from. Excuse me. So anyway, after visualizing this for a couple of months, some old college friends of theirs called them up and said, "Can we come visit you?" And they said yes. So this couple came to visit them, and when they all 4 got together, they had the most fun and laughing and talking and having such a great time. Well, this other couple was quite wealthy. And at the end of the evening, the wealthy couple said, "We have had so much fun with you. I hope you aren't insulted by us asking you about this, but we're traveling around the world next year, and we really want you to go with us. We would like your companionship. And would you go with us if we pay all of your expenses?" And they said, "We will definitely go." And so they traveled around the world. Actually, they've traveled around the world twice with these people. So that was something that they wrote on to do, and they programmed. So to have, to do. Then the next category is to be. As you write in this category, you'll start to think about what kind of a person you want to be. To be loving, to be caring. These are qualities. Or to be the best English professor you can be, or to be the best teacher you can be, or to be a wonderful mother, to be patient. Qualities, things like that. So you have, to do, and to be. The next category has more to do with the fact that you're a spiritual being having a human experience. And that one is the category to feel. These are the things you want to be able to direct yourself to feel. Now you can feel things no matter what's going on around you. You don't have to have anything to feel. You don't have to do anything to feel. You don't have to be anything to feel. You just feel. One of the things that I program for to feel is appreciation. Because to me, appreciation is a fabulous life condition. And if I appreciate the bad things and the good things, I always feel good. So to feel. And again, these are qualities like to feel loving, to feel enthusiastic, to feel appreciative, to feel fulfilled. So you have, to do, to be, to feel. And the last one has a lot to do with the fact that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. This is a major part of the human experience, and that is to serve. In other words, if you're not doing anything to make the planet a better place, you're not really having the ultimate human experience. So I think it's important to make that category as you write your goals. In what way can you serve? By cheering people up, or by helping people to realize their value, or by teaching, or by volunteering, helping people in some way. But you'll think of whatever it is for you that gives your life meaning. So now you should have a sheet that's just divided and says to have, to do, to be, to feel, and to serve. And what I'd like you to do now is to take about 10 minutes, and the video can be turned off during this time, to take about 10 minutes and begin to just think about your life and what you'd like to have and what you'd like to do and what you'd like to be and what you'd like to feel and how you would like to serve, and just start writing down ideas. Now you can write your short-term goals over on this side and medium-term goals here and long-range goals here. There's some things that might take a lifetime to achieve, so put them over here. Or some things that might take a year to achieve, so you might put them in here. And some things that you could achieve very quickly, so you can put them over here. So short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-range goals. So take some time now, after the video is turned off, and just begin to be quiet and think to yourself and write down the things that are important to you. Now that you've filled out this sheet and you've gotten an idea down on paper as to some of the goals that are important to you, what you can do is to take these things and write out each one in the form of a positive statement. It's very important to make it positive. In other words, if you have kidney disease, you don't write out the goal, I am free of kidney disease, because then you're still focusing on the negative. It's very important to focus on what you want, not what you don't want. So write it out, my kidneys are functioning perfectly. My kidneys are in excellent health. I am in perfect health on all levels, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So write out each one of these goals in a positive sentence and write them on a piece of paper. And then simply get a cassette tape recorder and turn it on and read each one of those goals into the tape recorder and then pause. And by doing this, you'll create a tape that you can actually use for yourself at level to give you a guidance to visualize these goals. How many of you have ever had the experience of being at level and you kind of drift off or you fall asleep a little bit, and then when you come back you go, well, I didn't really program for my goals. This will help you to stay on track. Now, I've shared this with graduates in the United States at graduate meetings, and the results have been absolutely phenomenal. People have come back, and for instance, a man that did this at a graduate meeting recently said that one of his goals was an absolutely impossible financial goal, or he thought it was impossible. But he wrote it down there, and he programmed it and read it onto a tape and listened to it. And a series of events occurred in his life that made it possible to reach that goal. He was totally amazed. In fact, he said everything on the sheet has started to happen. So when you take something that's just a thought and put it down on paper, you're already starting to make it physical. So you're starting to manifest your goals by simply writing them. And then by reinforcing those at level every day or every couple of days, you can really, really go towards those goals. Now I'd like you to take out another sheet of paper or the back of that sheet of paper. And I'd like you to pick one of the goals that you have on the front and do something that will help you to find out what's standing in your way of that goal. Because the things that are really standing in your way are your thoughts. Now, there was a woman here in the United States who came to me because she was programming for a romantic relationship and it just was not happening. So I said, I want you to write down every single negative thought you have about having a romantic relationship. And she wrote down things like, there are no intelligent men in the world. And things like, I have an ugly body. Nobody would be attracted to me. She was shocked when she wrote down all these things on the paper. She didn't even know she was thinking these things. But she was constantly canceling out her positive programming with these negative thoughts. When she had written down all of the negative thoughts, I had her write down next to each negative thought a positive thought that could really be true. And so, for instance, instead of saying there are no intelligent men in the world, she wrote, I only need to meet one intelligent man. I mean, she didn't need all the men in the world, she only needed one. There must be one man that's intelligent enough for me. And she wrote it down. Instead of, I'm fat and ugly and no one will pay attention to me, she wrote down, the right man will be attracted to me. She ended up with a list of positive, beautiful statements. And I told her to recite those statements out loud before she went into her level. And within 2 weeks, she had met the man that she's with now. So what I'd like you to do is to pick one of the goals that's on the front of your paper, turn over your paper, and begin to write down on the left-hand side of the page all of the negative thoughts that pass through your mind about this goal. It's very important when you do Mirror of the Mind to add this or something even better, because you don't want to limit what can happen to you. The Silva instructors in Paris, Michael and Lee, are good friends of mine, and they wanted to buy an apartment in Paris. But the apartments were so very expensive, tiny, tiny places, $400,000. It's like living in a closet. But they kept looking for apartments and programming to find the right place at a price that they could afford, but it wasn't happening. So then they remembered to add this or something even better. And they started programming that way. And immediately things started happening. And what happened was that a series of coincidences, incredible coincidences, led them to find a beautiful chateau house in the country about 50 minutes from Paris on 50 acres of land with a beautiful stream coming through and swans and a lake, a beautiful old house, large and spacious and beautiful, and trees everywhere. And they were able to get that house for the amount of money that they had wanted to spend. And they realized afterwards that as long as they had been just set on getting an apartment, it wasn't working for them because that wasn't what was best for them. When they added this or something even better, then they were guided to what they could really enjoy. And they are the happiest in that house. They're so excited about it. Also, another example of programming for the desired end result. This is a funny story that happened to 2 real estate salespeople in my city. They were both Silva graduates, and one was named Doris. And Doris would program at level that her client would like the houses that she was showing her. And she would come back to the office every day and say, this lady that I'm showing houses to, she always says she loves the house, but she never wants to buy it. So her partner, Hodges, who was also a Silva graduate, said, what are you visualizing at level? And Doris said, I'm visualizing her liking the houses. Oh gosh, that's what's happening, isn't it? I need to visualize her buying a house because that's what she wants and that's what I want, and it would be best for all concerned. So she went to level and visualized the woman signing a contract and buying a house. And she took the woman out the next day to see a house, and the woman said, oh, I just love this house. This is a wonderful house. And Doris said, well, would you like to buy it? And she said, no, this is not the kind of house I would buy. Now, that house over there across the street, that's just so cute. That's the house I would buy if I were going to buy a house. Doris came back to the real estate office and she was just amazed. She said, how could this woman say that she wants to buy a house she's never seen the inside of? And she said to Hodges, this is not working. My mirror of the mind is not working. She's not buying a house. And Hodges said, which house did she say she wanted to buy? And Doris said 4201 Dogwood Street. And Hodges said, this morning I listed that house for sale. And I went to level and programmed to sell it immediately. I have not even put the sign out in front of it. Let's take the lady over to see it. Well, they took the woman to see the house, and she loved it, and she signed a contract for it. So that's how those 2 realtors worked together on that situation. Sometimes people will tell me experiences that make me realize that there really are no limits. And a woman in Florida told me her experience. Her name was Toby. She found out that she had a cancer in her right kidney, and all sorts of tests had been done. In fact, 5 doctors had seen her, and they even did a biopsy and actually took out the material from her body and biopsied it, and it was cancer. That was on a Friday. They scheduled her immediately for surgery on Monday morning. Over Saturday and Sunday, she went to Level for 12 hours and visualized having a healthy kidney. And when she went in for the surgery on Monday, they cut her open and found no cancer in her kidney. It was actually embarrassing for the doctors because they took her kidney out and there was nothing wrong with it. And they told her, we don't know what's happened. We had an absolute biopsy. It was absolutely positive that you had cancer in this kidney, and we can find nothing. And then they sort of sheepishly said, well, the kidney looked slightly diseased, so it's probably a good thing that we took it out. They couldn't tell her, we took out a perfect kidney of yours. But that experience was so profound for her, and now she encourages many people. She's in perfect health. So don't put limits on your programming. I hope I've shared some things with you that will help you to understand what you can do with Mirror of the Mind and how to make your human experience the most pleasant one you can, to make it a meaningful one, something you can learn from, something you can feel good about, and something that you'll always remember that you're not a human being having a spiritual experience, but you are a spiritual being having a human experience.